Josh, may I start the countdown for the public live stream?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks.
Perfect. I will start the countdown for this public live stream in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everyone. This is Joshua Lambert, a group product manager here for GitLab, and I am the Enablement group manager. And today we'll be talking about our Enablement group conversation. You can find the slides and the link in the Google Doc. And we have a few questions rolling in, which is fantastic. Sid, you want to voice over your first question?
Yeah, thanks for the great slide deck. So for us, we have both users on GitLab.com and we have users self-installed, and that's still driving 90% of our revenue, the self-managed ones. I've seen we have a lot of new people coming in, and they naturally gravitate towards our .com offering, which is logical. But are we focusing enough on making sure the self-managed install is a great experience? Like that first 10 minutes, that's one of the light, and that it's a great process. We're doing user research there, and should be.
Yeah, so I think the answer is we should be focusing here more than we are today. For the overall installation journey, I went through the process, part of the product walkthrough in March, and it was painful, to be honest and direct. And so I have a number of items open to try and track that, but we should also, of course, be doing this on a more comprehensive basis with user interviews. So the growth team is getting an effort underway now, which is fantastic. Thank you so much to the growth team for getting that ball rolling. Fabian also noted an issue for Gia where we've been focusing on improving the user experience and getting started. So both those are really quite helpful. And then we also have a process underway to try and make provisioning of larger instance types also easier with the provisioner, and so automating an HA deployment, and that should hopefully take away some of the pain around that experience. But we should absolutely be doing more research here to answer your question.
Yeah, and I think the painful experience you had was with setting up Geo and everything. Are we also making sure that, like, to set up a simple server, the way most people will start, that's a much better experience, I hope, but that maybe that can use a little bit of polish as well.
Yeah, so we need to do both of those things, so we need to do a better job here. I think once we're past 13.0, we'll have some more time freed up. Right now we have a lot going on, but it's not really an excuse. It's just we need to do another focus here more conclusively in the near future. So we'll get that underway. Also on my experience, it wasn't actually Geo which was the problem for GitLab. It was a hard time finding the documentation, the license. I never got a license sent to me in the license generation process when I went through the process, so that was a challenge. And we also had bad and out-of-date recommendations on how to deploy GitLab. It just didn't work in some cases, even getting the HA deployment running. I know Colin is working on some support on improving the HA documentation as well. We also have a number of other initiatives around the efficiency improvements, which is doing some great changes to the documentation as well. But there were a number of findings just how to get started, which was challenging. So awesome. There's a lot we can do here.
Yeah, thanks for that context. That's super helpful. Also have the second question. We now are using Puma on GitLab.com. Yay. And now the next step is to roll it out. As far as I understood, but this is pretty complex, so I'm just saying what I think I know. I'm not saying, I don't think it's completely correct, but on GitLab.com, we use Puma multi-threaded for self-managed installations to prevent a ton of back and forth, to prevent a ton of I/O. We have a set of patches on Rugged that we ship that are not multi-threaded compatible, so we can't ship that out yet. And I don't know what I think at GitLab.com we get to live without the patches, maybe because we use SSDs and we got a ton more of I/O we can do. But it seems like the obvious thing would be to make sure that those patches are kind of both in GitLab for everyone, so everyone gets has less need of for IO. But that doesn't seem to be the solution. So I'm a bit puzzled what's happening and how we're going to solve it.
Yeah, sure. I can answer. I'm not sure if Camille's on. You can give maybe a more detailed answer, but I'll go first as I'm clicking through the attendees here. So basically, obviously, with the challenge with multi-threading and rugged is that Ruby has a GIL, and we need a lot of computation in a Ruby. It ends up time slicing through different threads because only one can actually execute at a given time. And so this causes a pretty significant increase in latency if you have rugged turned on. And so if you turn off rugged, it then, you won't see those increases in latency, which is what we see on GitLab.com. So GitLab.com does not use rugged today because we have SSTs. You only really need them if you have like a higher latency NFS drive. So what we are doing is we have built some auto detection in place so that if you need to have rugged turned on, it will, if I recall correctly, fail back to a single process, and then it will essentially behave like Unicorn would. I'm trying to find out if Camille's on. Who can give a more fuller answer here. If you are, I can't find you, so maybe just speak up. But in general, that's the overall plan, is to provide recommendations and to essentially recommend running with Puma with rugged turned on with one thread, which then behaves exactly the same as Unicorn does, with essentially no differences. So we can still.
So that's. Sorry.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. So that's kind of our fix, so we can ship Puma to most people.
Yes. So in other words, you can still migrate from Unicorn to Puma, and you can still leverage rugged. You just have to reduce thread counts to 1 and bump up the worker counts to what you were previously using with Unicorn.
That makes sense. Thanks for that. It's probably, there's a good reason we're not doing it, but the rugged code has probably some optimizations in it. Is it possible to bring those to Gitly or start kind of reverse engineering or adding that code efficiency to GitLab or IO efficiency to GitLab itself for everyone?
I believe the Gitly team is working on this. I think there's a caching layer among potentially other things that rugged does that make it slightly more efficient. So I believe there's an issue. I could probably find it to essentially eliminate rugged, and which would be great. So we can stop worrying about this sort of fragmented configuration matrix going forward.
Cool. Thanks for that.
Yep. I'll try and follow up with the Gitly status.
Appreciate that. Scott has the next one.
Hey, Josh, I was hoping you could expand a bit on the role for the infra PM, which is in late stage hiring, and also talk about cost savings opportunities on .com. I know we've identified a few, and the infra PM would be looking for more. If you could talk more about that.
Yeah, sure. So the infra PM, we're looking to have 2 significant impacts on the company. The first is being a product manager, the first product manager for the infrastructure group. So we have 2 engineering groups in there. We have the scalability and the release team, the release groups. And so it'd be great to have a product manager to help to evangelize for their needs across the broader product organization and product development groups. And so kind of what they're seeing and helping to make sure we translate that into the correct prioritization for other parts of the organization, as well as also just generally helping to prioritize the work that they are doing. And then we also have, there is some surface area of .com that it isn't really covered by any of the other product feature groups. So when obviously we want everyone to feel like they own their features on GitLab.com, which is great, but there are things like, what should our availability be? What do our margins look like? And other facets of the SaaS service that currently don't have a product owner. And so we're hoping to have the infra PM also help there and sit them on some of the cost and infrastructure and availability working groups that we have right now to help be that representative from product and make sure that that we're properly triaging these things and the proper processes in place. For example, right now, I think for a lot of cases, we don't really think about the cost impact of new features on .com. Something like, for example, the WebSocket discussion from last week could have a fairly decent impact on .com if we have more constant connections through to .com. And so we need to kind of think about those things beforehand and have an analysis done. And so that's another thing hoping to do is help improve some of our processes so we can consider these things before we get too far along.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, as far as the additional cost savings that we have a infrastructure cloud cost board that I can link in here really quickly. This is what the working group runs through, and we've tried to. Sorry, am I breaking up?
Jarv linked to it.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jarv. So we have that board that we run through that has labels attached for the various savings that we think we can achieve. This way we can, it's easy to figure out kind of like the importance and relative impact of these. And you can see more of those there. We'll go through and also start to work on tagging each of these also with the DevOps groups if they pertain to them. So some of these things like the node automated rebalancing, that might require some Gitly work. And so we'll help to also go through and make sure those appear so you can kind of filter for your groups as we find more of these opportunities. And I just opened one this morning on potentially maybe reconfiguring our node sizes for, to account for the Puma potential savings here as well. So you can see some there. There are some big ones, like the container storage is a big one. Some of the cloud NAT aspects are large. I know we've been working on a lot of these things for some time, and thank you to Tim and the team for prioritizing the container storage items. It's been a long journey to get here, but there's a big impact if we can actually do online garbage collection. So,
thanks, Josh.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I think I've got the next one, Josh. So Kai, thank you for putting that link in on the strategy for search, global search for self-hosted. A little bit of context, Josh, around this question. So some of my customers, as they start to use more and more of the collaboration features of GitLab self-hosted, what they're starting to do is actually create repos at the project level that they want to start dropping different files into, like not just code files, but Microsoft Word documents, PDFs. They're starting to use our product almost like a document management platform. And so their question to me is, how can I make those non-code files sort of discoverable inside my repo as well? And so they're looking at sort of the advancement, if you will, of search. And I'm not saying that we should become a document management platform, but I'm seeing my customers start to use us for that.
Huh, that's really interesting. Kai, do you want to comment there as current PM for global search?
Yeah, I'll finish out the week strong on this one. So I just linked one issue here, which is about indexing Elasticsearch or indexing Microsoft Word files in Elasticsearch. So this isn't the first time we've heard that customers are using this. It's also not necessarily something that I'm sure is the right use case of what we're building yet. I think it's something we need to continue to validate and understand from customers. I'm fairly certain we don't render Microsoft Word files in a repository in the blob view either. And so this is sort of like a weird way that you would upload them and then try and use our search to index them when we can't actually even render and display those results back to you. So there's a lot of variants with like file types like that just the entire app isn't ready to deal with those. I also asked about making it easier to install and manage. I will say that from customers that I've talked to or that we hear back up from support, I haven't heard about install issues, mostly because it's not anything that we have a path for. And so if those exist, it'd be great to talk to customers about what those experiences are to see how we can make it easier. From a management perspective, I linked an admin UI redesign that we had been working on late last year, put it on the back burner, but that we'd like to revisit, which is in terms of connecting to your Elasticsearch cluster and then getting some insights and visibility into that. I think that's an area where we can help, but there's a lot of different ways that people are installing and using Elasticsearch. So I think getting into that side of it is potentially a little more complicated at this time. I think that covers everything, but happy to have any other conversations about this if you'd like.
No, Kai, thank you very much. No, that did. That answered the question. I appreciate it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and just to quickly maybe address the first part question about making it easier to enable and manage. So that's not currently in the short-term plan right now. We're mostly focused on improving the operational aspects of the service. So we had a pretty big impact on reducing the overall index size last milestone. I think we estimate we can achieve about a 40% reduction in overall index size, which would be quite impactful here once we do like the next cluster rebuild to help us scale it to the next chunk of .com customers. And so we'll get some data there on whether or not that's actually accurate. But things like that are what we're currently focusing on. And then we'll also move on to more of the sort of improvements to the overall user experience, like the results page and potentially expanding out into different components. So there's some more color on kind of what we're focused on right now.
All right, thanks.
And it looks like he's next and he's not on the call, so I'll voice it over will we make it easier to search our handbook? Kai, you have already typed in the answer, so.
Yeah, I'll just verbalize the answer, which is the handbook is not in scope for the global search group. It is, there is a new group that is the static site editor group that does have the handbook in scope. From a technology standpoint, the handbook uses Agolia for search. It does not use, at least last I checked, someone should confirm that, but I'm pretty sure we still use Agolia for search. It does not use the same backend infrastructure that obviously the GitLab application uses. So it's not anything that the feature group that works on global search is looking at. That being said, Eric Sugar is the PM for that. I didn't see him on the call. I think Eric Brinkman's on the call if he has anything else to add, if it's a focus for them, but I linked to a handbook page about searching it, and then you can also follow up with Eric Sugar in the Slack group or Slack channel for more details on that one.
Yeah, I can add just a little bit of color, which would say, yes, it would be in scope for that team to own. It's not necessarily the focus at this point in time. The focus has been, for that team has been to remove really inefficiencies in the handbook with respect to pipeline time, build times and deployment times, which if you've been contributing to the handbook, you've hopefully noticed those have trended down over the past few months. And also getting a MVC of an actual static site editor into GitLab so that our handbook can begin to dog food it, or handbook users can begin to dog food that feature. And so we'll have a little bit more information on that in our group conversation, which actually happens to be tomorrow if you want to come and see what we're doing there.
Thanks, Eric. Sid, you have number 7.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's really good. It has a lot of detail. There's a lot of links. It's very clear. We also talk about the things that we can improve. And yeah, it seems that everyone is focusing on the right things. Like obviously I can determine that, but I see nothing that's off. I see just everyone focusing on stuff that adds, generates customer results and help us to make GitLab better. So really well done.
Thanks, Sid. Mech.
Hey, great slides. As I said, I want to congrats on slide 10. Getting staging geo up has been something, it's a long haul for a while. I'm curious what are the next steps to bake this into deployment. Are we going to plan to do like a smoke failover every deployment? What are the next steps here? I think Fabian has started answering that question. So
yeah, so thanks for those questions. I'm also very happy that we are essentially done with getting Geo on staging. That's been a little bit of a journey, so it's good to see this finish. Regarding the weekly deployments, I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure how this is being done right now. I actually thought that Geo is now part of those deployments. In terms of quality control, I completely agree with you that I would actually love to have all of these sort of smoke tests automated so that they run every single time. That's definitely part of our vision for Geo. What we've done in the meantime, especially for failovers, is the team essentially has a sort of a cadence before releases to do upgrade testing and failover testing. But I think this is a great opportunity for us to automate these things and then always do this on staging first, right? Because one of the big advantages of running Geo on the staging environment for us is really the scale as well. And it's also the complexity of the deployment. But this really gives us an opportunity to verify regularly that things are fine, which improves our confidence in the product tremendously. So both are valid points, and I'll make sure to speak with Jenny with regards to what specifically we can do to improve the QA going forward. I think on a high level and in general, one of the things that the Geo team, I think, is taking on is to ensure that Geo essentially stays up and running, right? That this is not oh yeah, we've deployed it once and then it just falls off and breaks again, right? We want this to be available and also build the knowledge in the team so that this is not something that is, only one person can actually do this, but something where, we build the knowledge inside the team, how to manage this, because that is also quite valuable when we help some of our customers with large deployments, fix some of the issues that they may encounter.
5-minute time check.
Okay, thanks. We can skip probably. I'll say that we can start small. At least we can test replication first before trying to do failover. And,
yeah, but I think both are valuable points.
Yep. Let's go on to point 9 for time. Thank you.
John Shackelford here. I was just wondering if you could explain to us what we're seeing in the version pings chart on slide 7, and help us understand what the takeaways are from that chart.
Yeah, so the goal here is to show effectively the upgrade behaviors of our customers. And so you can see, for example, that we have, 12.9, I can't explain the solid straight line up for 12.9. I think we need to take a further look at what's happening with this chart. So thanks for pointing that out. That's erroneous, but the goal overall is to show effectively what are the big cohorts of our upgrade paths? And so how far back are people staying? And so you can see here, the blue line is effectively that you're within a version that's at least within the past 3 months, right? So of the current release, you're effectively N-2. And then you can see the trailing 6 month is N-6, and you can see what our percentages look like. So effectively, we have half our customers on a release within the last 3 months. And we'll figure out what's going on there with 12.9. I'm not quite sure. But overall, essentially this can help you suss out. Typically, we had the biggest cohort from looking at this before it had an issue of around 30% of people would stay N-1. So we would ship 12.9, they'll upgrade to 12.8, the latest patch version. And this gives us good intelligence on making sure people are actually receiving the value we give them by upgrading their instances.
Thanks very much.
Yep, thanks for the question. We'll figure out that strange issue. Philip.
Yeah, so I just had a quick question on comparing a customer running a private AWS instance, which is very common, and what would be the delta if they move to GitLab.com specifically. So I noticed that AWS has done this with their own TCO calculator for moving from on-prem to AWS. That's helped them scale into the billions of revenue. And I'd love to understand, do we have a similar way to measure, hey, what would it be by migrating off of on-prem or from AWS or Azure, any sort of private instance, and just migrating that to GitLab.com? What are the cost savings? I know you still pay for CI minutes, but is there any tangible ROI there? Yeah,
so we should. So that's a great idea. And we should get an issue open. I'll open one up after this, unless you would like to. But effectively, there will be a cost savings, right? Because right now, our customers have to pay for all that compute. They have to have someone to maintain it and look after it. We do know that overall, customers appreciate the fact that GitLab is relatively low maintenance. From our last cab, we had one of our customers asked and did a survey, and the answer was around 1/4 to 1/2 person per GitLab instance at the customer advisory board level, so thousands of users. We're relatively efficient, but certainly moving to .com would reduce all your compute costs, as well as also allow you to kind of recover to some degree that person. Also need someone to maintain and manage overall like the settings and groups and proper things like that. But yeah, that's a great idea. It'd be a good story to pitch for helping to help shift customers to .com, or at least make sure they're aware of the benefit they could receive.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Great question.
All right, I think I've got the next one, Josh. So I think slide 7 actually answers my question, although I think I was looking for a graph that showed it percentage-wise. So if you were looking for all the install types, like normalized up to 100%, of that 100%, how many would be Omnibus, how many would be Helm? And just by looking at slide 7, it looks like a very, very, very small percentage of those would actually be a Helm installation. I mean, you can barely even see the line on that graph. So I was just curious, what's the desire? Do we have an opinion on where we'd like to see that trend? Do we want to start to push Helm chart installs? Do we want Omnibus to be the forerunner here? Just curious onto your team's opinion there.
Yeah, sure. So if you go onto the chart in Periscope, you can click and disable the other lines. You can actually compare them directly. We have right around 1,400 Helm chart installs with the usage ping turned on. It is growing at a pretty solid clip. So it is accelerating. But I'm not sure I'm going to push people towards Kubernetes at this point in time. I think it's maintaining and troubleshooting and operating a Kubernetes instance, if you aren't familiar with Kubernetes, is probably going to be a challenge. And so we have the recommendation in our documentation to kind of maybe not consider GitLab your first application you try and run in Kubernetes if you haven't done anything before. It's a fairly complex service. So that's the current recommendation we have, just because we kept getting a fair amount of support load. I think as we improve our documentation, they still have a lot of areas to improve on docs. I think as we, again, reach that out and as more Kubernetes knowledge proliferates, we can have a stronger nudge to Kubernetes, because the other parts are easier, like HA and like resilience. But overall, I think right now we have the right balance, given some of the challenges that customers had initially with deploying Kubernetes, if it was like their first try at it. Cool. Thanks for the question.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, hopefully, I mean, I think we got to keep an eye on it and make sure it continues to grow, but so far it is, trending up pretty significantly.
I wanted to just throw a comment on that as well, that I think one thing that we don't maybe sell enough or let customers be aware of is the ability to start on Omnibus and then migrate to a cloud native environment using an external database. There's the ability to peel off the services kind of one at a time. In certain circumstances, we're still working on supporting that and what that looks like long term. But the idea that you don't have to make an either or choice, you can go from one to the other, I think is something that we can do a good job of letting customers know that option exists.
So we're over time. Thank you, everyone. And also, Eric, just to kind of one last tidbit there is that we're continuing our journey with .com to Kubernetes. And so as we continue that, we're learning some new things and we're finding some issues and we're fixing them. So once that wraps up, and we'll again have a little more confidence to more strongly recommend Kubernetes. But yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate the questions.